Now let's take a look at building the toes and the rest of the foot. So we have a single piece of geometry for the leg, but how do we start to create a more complex piece of geometry down here, something that maybe has 3 toes and it all connects together and blends seamlessly? Well, that's really one of the strengths of using polygons. We can start with one object, start to combine different things together, and then blend everything together. So I would go ahead and start with a single toe. And to do that, we'll go ahead and just bring in a primitive cylinder. Okay, and we've got the cylinder activated just as we looked at with the cube. You can see that it has its own special icon. We have attributes that we can change. So we can go ahead and kind of get it close to what we want. So we can change the radius. We can change the height. We can also change the orientation. So I want it to be going along in the Z direction. So I'll go ahead and change that orientation there. All right, now I don't want to have this many segments. Right now there's 36 segments going all the way around. Here on the leg we have 8. Okay, so we're thinking about this knowing that we're going to have 3 of these pieces of geometry and they're going to have to blend in with this piece of geometry. So I want to make them a little bit lower, but I don't want to make them so low that we can't get a good shape. So I'm going to actually change the segments all the way down, and let's change them down to 6 segments. Okay. All right, let's also go ahead and add a few segments along the height to give us a little bit of shape to this. All right, and let's go ahead and end it there. I'm going to go ahead on the caps. You can see that we can turn on the caps or off the caps, okay? But we can't turn off one or the other, okay? So if you want a cap on one end, you can go ahead and just delete it from the other end if you want. You could also, if you wanted to make a fillet, you could do that. You can see you can make a kind of a nice softer transition on the end. So go ahead and turn that on, and let's take the segments down to something like 3. It gives us a little bit of softness on the end of our toe. Okay, let's take the radius down just a little bit more, and let's take the height down a little bit as well. Again, we can modify this later. So once we get it close, now we can go ahead and convert it and make that editable. So we can go ahead and bring this down. We can call this something like toe. Now I want to actually take off the end of this toe. So I'm in a polygon mode. I'm going to drag across these polygons and go ahead and just delete those. Again, I want to either optimize or just delete those extra points there. And then we can take this whole thing and start to move it over. Okay, and start to get it into position. If you look at our side view, it's a little bit large. So we can go ahead and scale this down a little bit. Come down here and the scale. There we go. And just kind of scale it down a little bit. All right. So before we actually put it into position, let's get a little bit more of the geometry the way that we want it for this toe. So we want to create kind of a claw coming out here. So I'm going to go ahead and use live selection, and we'll select these polygons here. Let's go ahead and kind of push them in to the toe. And I want a little bit more of a crease there, so I'm going to actually extrude those. So I'm going to go ahead and right click, go extrude, and push those in a little bit. Okay. Now let's go ahead and extrude. Well, let's just go ahead and extrude it back out. So again, this time pulling it out. Now you can change the number of subdivisions. So if you want to have a couple of subdivisions in there, you can. Okay, and then we can start to shape this. So coming in here, I'll go ahead and take this end. And I don't want to scale it down to nothing. I want to have a little bit of thickness there, but I'll go ahead and modify that a little bit. Same thing here. Kind of bring that down a little. Maybe take this bottom up and just add a little bit of kind of a claw here. And if you want to add more divisions, you can do that. If you want to take this edge, for instance, and make it into 2, we can go ahead and use a bevel, and that'll bevel that edge right into 2 and give you a little bit more contour there. All right, so once you get a single toe, and I think this might be a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and again just delete these back polygons and points here. Okay, and then sort of get it into position. So kind of put it up here. So now once we have one of these, we can start to create the other 3. So I'll kind of get this and kind of rotate it into a rough position. Now to duplicate this, all I have to do is hold down Control, and I'll just drag it out in the Objects Manager, and now we have a copy. So now we can go ahead and rotate this out. Maybe scale this middle one up a little bit. Drag off of the axis here. Make this one a little bit bigger. Okay, make another copy. Drag this one over, and we'll rotate that one around a little bit, maybe scale it down a little. And I want them to be sort of touching here on the back part of it. Okay. Now we can start to modify the shape of these. So maybe select that middle one, and I want to come in and modify that shape a little bit. You can do the same thing here. Okay, so spend some time doing that. So with the toes now, I want to go ahead and select those. And so let me go ahead and select all 3 of those toes. Let's connect objects and delete. Okay, again, so now we have one object that is the toes. Now at this point we can come in and we want to start to merge these together. So we'll go ahead and with a rectangle selection on points, go ahead and select those 2 points, go to weld, and you can see that you can either weld them to this point, or right in the middle, depending on where you click. So I'm going to pick right in the middle to bring those to their midpoint. We'll do the same thing with these 2 points. Let's go ahead and weld those right to the center. Okay. And then you can decide how you want that to start to blend together. Okay. So we could come in and start to extrude this out, but we eventually want this outline here to be able to connect up with this. So I'm going to take these edges here and create geometry between those. Okay, so let's just use stitch and sew. And let's go from here to there. And it doesn't like that. We'll go ahead and use bridge. So choose bridge and come across and create some geometry here and then also underneath, just by dragging one edge to the other. Again, just here in edge mode. Okay. Now we'll go ahead and take the edges here. Okay. And we go ahead and use an outline selection. We'll select that entire outline there. And let's go ahead and hit extrude. And we'll go ahead and extrude that off. Let's take down the subdivisions. And then we can just sort of pull this off. Now from this point, we can start to shape this a little bit more. So as it comes in, you know, obviously we want it to kind of come in up here. We can start to shape the toes a little bit more. And this starts to, we want to start to blend in with the cylinder of the ankle, or of the ankle would actually be up a little bit higher, but the base of the toes. Okay, and so we can go ahead and kind of gradually shape this as we take these points over. Okay, and then we could do that again. Go ahead and do another extrude. And you could do it all at once if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and extrude that out. And then go ahead and pull that up. Maybe do some rotation on it. to kind of rotate it around. Do a little bit of scaling. You just want to tweak those points. Again, kind of what we did with the leg, just kind of getting them a little bit closer to the geometry that they'll eventually be connected to. Okay. So now with the whole foot selected, we can kind of move it over just a little bit. Okay. We can start to take some of these points, and I just want to kind of move them up here and kind of get a nice transition going between the leg geometry and the toes. All right. Now we're going to have more geometry on this foot than we have here. So we need to kind of figure out how we're going to actually start to connect these things. But before we do that, we can go ahead and select both of these pieces of geometry because we know we're going to have them be the same. The toe and also the leg, which we haven't named yet. And we can go ahead and connect it. Okay, we'll call this leg left. Okay, so now we have that geometry that we need to fill in between the leg and the toe. So let's go ahead and continue on this process in the next lesson and pick up right here where we left off.